Hi, this is Shannon Seaver, and today we are looking at Part 3 of Section 3.5. We are looking at negations of conditional statements in DeMorgan's law. So on our agenda for today, we're going to write a negation of a conditional statement, and we're going to use DeMorgan's law. So first of all, I would like to show you how to negate a conditional statement. We can use this formula to help us negate conditional statements. We have it is the case that if P, I'm sorry, let me say this again. It is not the case that if P then Q is equivalent to the same thing as saying P and not Q. So this is the formula that you would use to negate a conditional statement. So you need to write this down. Let's look at an example. Write the negation of, if too much homework is given, a class should not be taken. So the first step of this is that you need to write this in symbolic form. So here we have, P is too much homework is given, and Q, a class should be taken. So this is our symbolic form, because the way it is written up above is, if too much homework is given, then a class should not be taken. So it's not Q because it's not up here. Next, we want to find the equivalent, and we can do that using the formula that we were given in the last screen. So we can say that not P then if negated Q is equivalent to P and negated of what was already there to start with. And since Q was already negated, it will become positive. Now that we have our formula, we can write it in words. So it's going to be, too much homework is given and the class should be taken. Now, just to warn you, this may not sound very logical in your mind. Too much homework is given. Why would you want to take the class in that case? Don't think of it that way. Use the formula, okay? That's important. Now I want you to take a chance to try it on your own. Here is our statement. If you do not have a fever, you do not have the flu. So take a moment now and try this on your own. Are you ready to see the answer? First, remember, you have to put it in symbolic form. We have P, you have a fever. Q, you have the flu. And in this case, we have not P, then not Q, because it's negated up here. Do not, do not. Second, we need to use the formula that we have been given. We have not P, then not Q. So we are going to leave this part the same, but we're going to negate the second part and use an and instead. So we have not P and Q. Now putting this back into English, you do not have a fever and you have the flu. Next, I want to talk about DeMorgan's law. Remember from the last unit when we were using set theory that we learned about DeMorgan when we have A and B not. Well, remember that we give that not symbol to both A and B and we change it to an or. And the same with A or B not. We give A not and B not. So we flip the and or signs and we give each one a prime sign. Well, the same thing happens with our logic statements. We have an and here. We give each statement a not and we flip that sign here. Also, same with this one. If we're starting with an or statement, we flip it and we give each statement a not. So write this down. It's going to be important for you. Let's put it into use. Using DeMorgan's law, we're going to write a statement that is equivalent to, it is not true that Atlanta and California are cities. So first of all, we need to write our symbolic forms of the statement. Atlanta as a city is going to be P, and California as a city is Q. So we want to negate P and Q. Remember, we're going to flip the sign like we have here, and we're going to negate both. So if that's the case, I'm going to say the negated form of P, which is Atlanta is not a city, or California is not a city. We're going to do the same thing in this case. Write a statement that is equivalent to, it is not true that Bart Simpson and Tony Soprano are cartoon characters. So first, Bart Simpson is a cartoon character is P. Tony Soprano is a cartoon character is Q. So we're going to say not P and Q. And notice that we're starting with an and, so we're going to flip it to an or sign, and we're negating both. So Bart Simpson is not a cartoon character, or Tony Soprano is not a cartoon character. So let's think about that and put it into use in this statement. This is from Martin Luther King Jr. It is not true that they will be judged by the color of their skin, or not by the content of their character. So the first thing we need to do in this case is to put it in symbolic form. So our first statement is going to be P, they will be judged by the color of their skin, and Q, they will be judged by the content of their character. Now, remember the first one is in a positive. They will be judged by the color of their skin, so P is going to be just regular P. Q here, up above, we said not by the content of their character, so it's going to be a not Q inside. The same rules are going to apply. We are going to first turn that around to an and statement. P was positive to start with, so we're going to negate it. But because Q is negated to start with, a negative of a negative makes a positive. So the answer to this will be, they will not be judged by the color of their skin, and then, it shouldn't say the, and they will be judged by the content of their character. So this statement is equivalent to this statement in logic. Next, I want to talk about negating conjunctions and disjunctions. We're going to write a negation for each of the following statements. All students do laundry on the weekends, and I do not. So if we consider all students that do laundry on the weekends is the P statement, we have an and, which is this. I do not would be Q. One thing I just noticed is that there's a typo on the screen. Notice it says I do not. This should be a not Q right here. So if we're going to negate this, we are going to switch the sign to an or and make sure that each one gets negated on the inside. So P becomes negative, but Q becomes positive. So our final product on this one would be the following. Some students, because we're going from an all, remember if we go from all, we got to go to a some. Some students do not do laundry on the weekends, or I do. Let's look at the next one. Some college professors are entertaining lecturers, or I'm bored. So this first statement is going to be P. We have or and I'm bored. So in this case, they're both written in positive form in our original sentence, so we'll leave them that way in our symbolic statement. We're going to flip our or sign to make it an and give each one a negative. So when I go to write this, remember, we go from a some to a none. So no college professors are entertaining, and I'm not bored. Now, I'm going to challenge you to take a moment to try to do this one on your own, and then come back and check to see if you did it right. So let's look at the first one. All horror movies are scary. That would be P. And some are funny, Q. Notice that they're all written in the positive format. We don't see a not in either one. So when I go to negate it, I'm going to change the and to an or and negate both P and Q. So if I were to write that out, it would be some horror movies are not scary and none are funny. look at B. Your workouts are strenuous, or you do not get strong. So in this case, we'd have P or not Q because we have a not here. Now, when we negate it, we negate the P, and the negated Q will become positive. So we go from or to and. Your workouts are not strenuous, and you get strong. Now, let's look at DeMorgan's law to formulate a contrapositive. Write the statement equivalent to, if it rains, notice there's a comma there, I do not go outdoors, and I study. So there's three parts to this. We have a P, Q, and an R. So we have P, then, notice that we have a comma, so we're going to use the parentheses. Do not go outdoors, so it'll be not Q and R. So what we want to do is find an equivalent, and remember that a contrapositive is equivalent to a conditional. We learned that in last section yesterday. So, or actually earlier this week anyway. So what we do is actually flip these two statements and negate them both. So notice that's what we have done here. We will have to use DeMorgan's law to do this part. So remember, when we have a negation on the outside, we're going to negate both the inside and flip the and statement to an or, which is what we did right here. So we have a Q, because it was negated to start with, or not R, then not P. So if the outcome of this would be, if I go outdoors or do not study, comma, then it doesn't rain. Now you try the same complicated thing, but I think you can do this. If it is not windy, comma, we can swim and we cannot sail. Take a moment to pause the video and then come back in and check on it. So the first part of this is to write it in symbolic form. We have not windy, so it'll be not P, then Q, which is positive, but not sail is negative. So when we flip our two statements around, we're going to negate this statement here, not Q and not R, then P. So Q becomes negative, this becomes an or, and the R becomes positive because it's negative to start with. Then notice that P started off negative, so P becomes positive over here. Our outcome to this should have been, if we can't swim or we cannot sail, then it is windy. And that brings us to our conclusion for today.